Yesterday, an act of terrorism tried to silence our democracy. But today we meet as normal, as generations have done before us and as future generations will continue to do, to deliver a simple message. We are not afraid, and our resolve will never waver in the face of terrorism.
British Prime Minister Theresa May addressing Parliament Thursday, one day after a terror attack in central London that left 4 victims dead, including 1 American and dozens of others injured. The attacker, identified as 52-year-old British-born citizen Khalid Masood, drove a car into pedestrians on Westminster Bridge and then attempted to enter Parliament, stabbing a police officer before being shot and killed. Wednesday's attack came on the 1-year anniversary of the Islamic State assault on the airport and subway station in Brussels, and also follows last year's truck rampages in Nice and Berlin. Wall Street Journal columnist and editorial page writer Sohrab Ahmari joins us now from London. Welcome, Sohrab.
Hi, Paul.
Okay, so Islamic State has claimed credit for this a day after the attack. Do British authorities agree that this looks like it was Islamic State, at least inspired?
I think that's still something that they're investigating. They've made a number of arrests in Birmingham and elsewhere where Khalid Masood had links, Paul. The Islamic State itself, through its media channels, has claimed responsibility and said Khalid Masood was a quote-unquote soldier of the caliphate. But that still remains to be seen, because the organization has a tendency to do that, where people who are inspired by its message, who are lone wolf characters, after the fact, when they go out, then the organization takes credit for them, and it really doesn't matter in a way, because they may never have had any direct contact with the organization. It may not have been plugged into official jihadist networks, but nevertheless drew inspiration from it, and then Islamic State can point to the fact afterwards and feed this to its supporters as a success.
All right. One thing we haven't heard so far is a lot of evidence from his computers or literature he was reading or anything like that, which typically in the United States with these kinds of attacks does come out pretty quickly. We haven't seen that in this one, but we have seen arrests in Birmingham and a couple of more on Friday. Is there that suggests that this could be a broader network?
It could be, and I think one thing to make note of the fact is that Khalid Masood himself had a background as a petty criminal. He'd come into contact with law enforcers for other types of non-terror offenses. And the Prime Minister pointed out that he had been a peripheral, quote-unquote, character in other terrorist instances, but wasn't picked up, which recalls the Omar Mateen case in the U.S., where the authorities suspected something, but ultimately concluded he wasn't a threat. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the case. So, and this just goes to how difficult this new model of terrorism is, where it's these people with petty criminal backgrounds, radicalized somehow, and then with just a car and a knife, they can unleash havoc on a major metropolitan area.
Yeah, Birmingham is a particular source of concern for British security agencies. Explain why that is.
Well, it's 3 areas that are where most of the British jihadis come from. Right now, there's 3,000 jihadis that the British authorities are looking at. Not all jihadis, but extreme cases, extremists, radicals,
people
and so forth.
who are under suspicion.
Exactly. So you have Birmingham, and you have East London, and you have a suburb of London called Luton. These are areas where there are pockets of Muslim communities, vast majority of them perfectly law-abiding, but it's where these radical mosques, radical imams operate, and where most of the foreign fighters, for example, who go off to Syria and Iraq may originate from these types of neighborhoods. And you see these patterns all across Europe, specific neighborhoods around Brussels, specific suburbs of Paris, where you have typically ill-assimilated Muslim communities. It doesn't mean that all of them are ticking time bombs, but that they're these ecosystems that breed jihadism.
One of the things that's really interesting, this is the first big attack in Britain since, I think, the subway bombings in 2005. So the British intelligence services, security agencies have a pretty good record here, and yet they've been warning now for some weeks that there could be a lot more attacks. Is there any particular reason they've been saying that? Is this partly Syrian related, for example?
Paul, I think that this has been something that we should have been alert to, in the sense that as Islamic State is losing territory in Iraq and Syria, that it may attempt to radicalize more people. Now, again, it's not clear in this case whether Khalid Masood was directly radicalized or plugged in. He may not have been. But the fact that these organizations feel squeezed in their terrorist homeland, so to speak, may result in more attacks abroad, just for them to be able to say that they're still in the game. I've heard from Middle Eastern security analysts and officials where they say, you know, watch out for the next wave might be ISIS 2.0 trying to prove itself, whatever that organization is, being extremely brutal, and then the remnants of ISIS 1.0 just trying to show that it's still in the game by staging brutal attacks.
Okay, Sohrab Ahmari, thanks very much for staying up late for us.